And now we are talking about the price now being hanged on the volatility of these very volatile variables.
Yes.
Especially these two important factors. We talk about the crude oil price and the dollar exchange rate.
Yeah.
Now, when any one of these two changes, the price changes at the filling station. And these things changes per second, per minute, per hour, per day. They keep changing. And whenever there is a little change, it affects the pump price. So every time you have to check what's the price, what's the quoted price at the filling station. For the crude oil price, we don't have control over it because the market of the crude oil is international, is global. We don't have control. If you look at the oil price analysis, the trend, from last week, you know, it was increasing. Last I checked, it was around 76, the Brent benchmark, around $76 per barrel. Last night when I checked, because I was coming here, I was trying to check the market, it's around 80. And then maybe tomorrow when you check, it's going to go higher. Because the fear that Iran might withdraw from the supply pool is going to affect the entire pool. So, but if you look at the volatilities of these two factors, especially I talk about the dollar is the major problem in this scenario, in this explanation. The dollar exchange rate is the biggest problem. It's not subsidy removal, because if dollar remained where it was, despite the subsidy removal, the situation will not have been this worst, because we are as rich as the naira. If naira loses value, so does average Nigerian. So the devaluation of naira is what led to this inflation and higher prices.
And is there anything that can be done about that? Can't there be any intervention on that score?
The game of currency is the art of production. You have to produce to protect your currency.
And we're not producing anything.
So what are you producing? So you ask yourself, it's a very simple scenario. You produce and then you protect your currency. Let me put it into perspective. At the refinery gate, if dollar will come down to 500 naira, PMS will be sold 350 naira per liter. If dollar will be 1,000 naira, the PMS will be sold 750 naira per liter. And if dollar reaches 2,000 naira, PMS could be sold 1,400 at the refinery gate, not at the filling station. So if you risk devaluing the naira or allow the naira to depreciate to 2,000 naira per dollar, then at the filling station, maybe we add the profit margin, we add the transportation.
Okay, so
the liter could be 1.5 or 1.6. There are two things that you mentioned there. First is Dangote buying crude from abroad.
Yes.
So like I say, refining business is national. It does not mean Dangote is in Nigeria, he must buy the Nigerian crude oil. The crude oil is being traded in advance before this time.
Okay.
So Dangote comes now, he cannot say he wants to buy someone's crude oil. So if he wants crude oil in the future, he has to start engaging the contract. In 10 years' time to come, he start collecting crude oil. And I've already said it, some of the crude oils have been forsold. Already. So he has to go and look for cheaper crude grades around the world. We have the spot market, we have the forward, we have the speculated, the futures market. So it depends on the contract that you are engaging. Spot is there, but it might be expensive. You want it right now, you drop money and you collect it. The forward is where you agree on a continuous supply, you agree on the price, and then you keep collecting. That's also agreement. Futures is in the future, maybe 10 years time. It depends on the contract. But Dangote has started looking for crude grade around the world. He has one of the best refineries that can blend any kind of crude grade. So he doesn't care which quality is it, because he can blend them. So for the second part of your question is the selling of the petrol or crude oil in naira.
Yes.
The only effect is that the need for the dollar will not arise in the transaction, because if you look at more than 50% of our imports comes from the importation of the refined petroleum. So you're already substituting the demand for the dollar for such kind of importation. But in terms of the costs, all arrangements, every product or commodity to be exchanged is first valued in dollar and then converted to naira.
So you only end up paying the naira equivalent.
Using the existing exchange rate. So if the exchange rate changes, so also the value you are paying for that commodity or product in naira. So it's direct conversion. Okay, we are giving you this crude oil. This is how much it's going to be in dollars. You just multiply it by whatever is existing or the prevailing exchange rate, and then you get. So if he's buying it at expensive value in naira, he will sell it at expensive value in naira. If he's selling it in naira too, at the moment, Dangote is selling a ton of PMS around $735 per ton. What you just need to do is to multiply that ton by the
naira, by the existing exchange rate,
and then you get around 919 naira per liter. That is what Dangote will be selling to buyers. I mean, to marketers. All refineries are the same. Refining business is global business. It's international. Whether it's owned by Dangote, whether it's owned by NNPCL, whether it's owned by government, it's the same business. It's international. They buy from at the same price. Okay. Whatever is a quoted price, that's what they buy. And they look at their costs. Unless you want to subsidize, that's just the difference. But in terms of the operation, it's the same. Because they buy the same commodity from the same market, and it's the same machine, it's the same system. You produce it, and then you have the same cost.
Okay, but as an economist, in demand and supply, if you've got more refineries putting more products into the market, shouldn't that drive prices down?
Yeah, that's the market. But it may not affect the refining costs. Because at a refinery gate, there's a price. Okay. So what happened before that, in terms of the upstream or the midstream there, that is how much you buy the crude oil, and then the cost of your labor and other maybe transportation. That's the element. But in terms of the demand and supply, the demand does not change the price, but rather the cost. But the only point where the demand can affect the price is at the crude oil market. So the crude oil price could be influenced by the demand and supply forces, which will come down. But the demand for the PMS, whether you have high PMS or less where PMS demand, or less where the refiner want to go at a loss or maybe reduce its profit. But that's the only way the demand and supply can affect the market. But if you talk about the Middle East, so there is possibility, according to some of the price intelligence, is that prices are going to go higher. There's going to be price surge, and that will also affect the price in Nigeria, the pump price. So even though some Europeans and the Western world would like to come to and buy crude oil from Nigeria because of disruption, but we're also lacking in terms of capacity to produce on daily basis, because we are doing less than 2 million, which is grossly inadequate.
Because ordinarily we should be benefiting from this.
Yeah, we should be benefiting.
Yes.
But that's translated into higher prices.
Yeah.
And most of our crude are forward sold. So we might, instead of reaping the benefit of higher prices, we are paying creditors. I mean, Nigeria is implementing the full deregulation of the sector, which means that the supply of the PMS is open to competition. Marketers should be allowed to supply. Not only NNPC should be the one to be supplying, the supplier of the last resort, but other players can supply. And the price should reflect the market forces. And that's why even the NNPC itself is selling to the market dynamics, is selling to reflect the market dynamics. And if they fail to do that, they will not survive. In 2 weeks, NNPC has lost over 13 billion naira from selling PMS, buying it from Dangote Refinery and selling it to marketers. So if you look at the amount of money they spend in buying the product and selling it to the marketers, they've lost 13 billion in 2 weeks. So for NNPC to stick to a fixed price without reflecting to the market dynamics cannot survive. I would not survive. So things will keep changing based on the changes in the market.
When you say keep changing, does that means that the price is just going to keep going up?
Yeah,
changing means going up.
It could be changing in an hour, changing in hours, changing per day.
Incredible.
Yeah, so because Nigerians are actually exposed to the market volatilities. And it's just like a baby that has been breastfed for years. And the mother has weaned the baby. So the baby is on its own. So that's what Nigerians are. We are on our own. So there is no protection. NNPC is being in the middle as a shock absorber, but it's no more there. Yeah, exactly. That's why NNPC cannot continue with this protection and direct involvement. So NNPC is incurring that loss. According to some statistics we did, researches we did, we found out that on daily basis, NNPC is losing 14 billion naira for subsidy. And that will reduce the NNPC ability to pay back its marketers, its suppliers. And with this pile of debt, NNPC will not be able to continue to supply. And that's why the NNPC said, you guys, you can go to any refinery and buy and to supply. Because NNPC cannot mandate marketers that have not paid for their job, for their services, to supply again. And this also brought us to the willing buyer, willing seller principle, which is categorically mentioned in the law. But it also exposes Nigerians to exorbitant price, because the willing buyer, willing seller means the seller will fix his price to make profit, and there's nobody to tell him to reduce price or this profit is too much. So the competition is already on. Buyers, suppliers can go to foreign refineries and even bring petrol from other refineries around the world. Not necessarily Dangote. Marketers can go to Dangote directly and supply to the Nigerian market. But the challenges are, I mentioned the price going to go high, which also is going to exacerbate inflation. Inflation is already above 30%, which also is going to increase poverty, because
food prices,
petrol is an essential commodity or product that can affect consumption of other things. It's also an integral part of transportation, which is also part of prices of almost everything. And that's going to reduce the purchasing power of Nigerians' income.
Absolutely.
So it's going to make the situation worse, especially with growing population. The anxiety, the frustration is mounting.
Okay, now you're, I'm told that you're actually a assistant prof in associate prof in petroleum, and as a petroleum economist, I'm sure you're more inclined to the laws of demand and supply rather than sentiment. I mean, a lot of people say, look, you can't just leave this thing purely to the issues of demand and supply. I mean, we haven't done it fully, and look at what Nigerians are going through. Shouldn't there be some sort of safety nets in the midst of all this? Because other countries do it.
Yeah, there should be. But is it possible? That's the question. Is it sustainable? We're talking about 14 billion minimum to sustain that protection. And if that's the only thing government will do, that's sufficient. But the government have to fix insecurity, has to fix healthcare, has to fix education. So I'm not giving an excuse for the government to remove the subsidy, but we are saying that this kind of subsidy that is exorbitant should not continue. But there should be the right process and procedure for bringing the subsidy, removal, so that we protect Nigerians from the shocks that's going to come after that. So
I take that as a suggestion that maybe that hasn't been done?
That has not been done.
Okay.
So the manner through which the subsidy was removed is what caused where we are today. So all the situation
what went wrong, in your opinion?
There was no strategic plan for the removal of the subsidy, and there are so many conditions we have to fulfill before we remove the subsidy, and there are stages for removing the subsidy. But all these things have not been followed. So it wasn't just caught strategy, and it just happened, and things started happening, and then if one thing happened, you think what to do about it. So you're just working on impulse.
And these are irreversible things?
And they're irreversible, and they have far-reaching consequences. Because one mistake you do today, it might reverberate for 10 years, 5 years, and affecting the economy.
Let me come in here because one time, and I've just been listening to you, and I'm sure Nigerians are also listening, because someone sent a message in and says, well, NNPC is grappling with growing debt owed to gasoline suppliers, while the cost of gasoline subsidies has further depleted its cash reserves. I hear all of this semantics. Nigerians are the ones who are feeling it. How can they communicate actively to tell Nigerians what to expect? Is that possible? Is that the responsibility of NNPC?
Yeah, there is communication gap in how all these things are managed. The Nigerian government is not honest, or rather are not open to Nigerians about their plans. You, as leaders, you have to be honest to your people. Whether that's going to be very good or bad, at least be honest to and open to your people to get to know where you're coming from.
And where you're going, perhaps.
And where you're going, and your justification.
For what
because
you're doing.
it's not how brilliant or convincing you are with your ideas, but how you're able to convince your followers, to communicate your reasoning. And that's why a lot of people, even the issue of this subsidy removal, the pricing, people are asking, how do you go about the pricing? Are prices going to change? Because the policy makers, the government, or the NNPC itself is also not giving enough information. So a lot of people are allowed to speculate. And like I'm telling you right now, things are changing by hour. So the need for information
is key.
Because even Dangote is changing his price by the day.
Yeah.
Because the flat is quoting the price of the crude oil, and anytime when that changes, Dangote will also change the price. So prices keep changing every single day.
So it's not just communication for some people, accurate.
Yeah, accurate and timely information.
And I guess that's the reason why we have to bring people like you on the show from time to time to try and help us make sense of some of these things that nobody seems to understand these days. Many thanks, Dr. Ahmed Adamu. Dr. Adamu is an associate professor in petroleum economy, and he has indeed helped us make a little bit more sense of
For now.